Welcome to another episode of Hoopsology. I am Justin Goodrum, joined by Matt Thomas. What's up, man?
Hey, man, welcome back to the show. How is Colorado treating you?
Good. It's surprisingly cool up here. Lots of thunderstorms, and I heard on the news that it always rains on Memorial Day, and it
Hmm.
snows on Halloween. So
Oh, there we go.
that's a that's going to be a interesting change. And also being in a city with an NBA team, the Denver Nuggets, and the hockey team Colorado Avalanche, both in the playoffs. So the playoff spirit is certainly alive in the city. How are you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing well. You're going to have to make sure you catch the Nuggets Bulls games every year when the Bulls come to town.
For sure.
You'll have that NBA outlet.
It's true. It seems like their fans are not as fanatical as Broncos fans. So if the 49ers play the Denver Broncos, I'll make sure not to wear any 49ers fan gear just to avoid any issues regarding that. But it seems like the Nuggets fans are pretty cool. So I don't expect any problems with the Nuggets and Chicago Bulls facing off. So looking forward, like you said, to checking that out.
Nice. Yeah. Plus, I think you can get away with wearing Jordan gear just about anywhere.
Yeah, that's true.
You kind of have a pass with the Bulls gear for Jordan being on that team. Maybe not in like New York, or maybe not, in some of those rival teams. Maybe not against the Pacers, but everywhere else, I think you're good.
That's true. First of all, some housekeeping notes. First, I want to thank you, Matt, for holding down the fort with your playoff preview. Very informative. Listened to the entire thing. Provided some great knowledge, and looking forward to talking to you about the playoff series so far. And also wanted to thank our guests. If you listen to the audio portion of this, you just heard her, Natalie White, interim president and chief operating officer of the Los Angeles Sparks, the WNBA. Awesome interview. Provided some just great advice in terms of if you wanted just to follow in her footsteps, or just great advice in general, just in life. It's her story, just in terms of her college career and this her running a WNBA team, just really fascinating. So go check that out. The audio that'll be up on YouTube. It's on Facebook, Instagram, pretty much everywhere, along with our podcast outlets. And of course, a shout out to Off the Glass Podcast Network. They've been putting up a lot of great playoff, not only articles but playoff podcasts as well. So you got us along with the rest of those shows on that network. I'm just breaking down the playoffs of multiple NBA teams. So you're going to be covered. You won't miss out on anything. So, man.
OTGbasketball.com to find that content. And also just wanted to give you a quick shout out and give you kudos for that interview, man. Great job with that.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, she was really cool to talk to. I think she was like in a restaurant, or I couldn't tell. It was a cool setting where she was. So it's definitely really informative to talk to her. So that was a fun chat.
Definitely.
So man, if you don't mind, walk me through the playoffs here, and I want to kind of just chat with you on just running down the series. I think I have to be honest. Typically, in the first round, I'm not really into it. That's full disclosure, but I think this year is the exception. I think there's a lot of fascinating stories in every single series, and I've been really captivated. So I have a lot of thoughts. So Matt,
awesome.
Pick your poison. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, why don't we start in the Eastern Conference, and you almost made me I don't know, jump, I guess, because I was going to say, man, the first round is pretty great this year, compared to other years. So if you're saying you're checked out already, it's but yeah, let's start in the East. Let's start, I guess, with the most maybe simple, maybe bland and boringest series, and then we'll get more and more entertaining, because most of them, I agree, are very entertaining. But let's start with the 76ers and the Washington Wizards, the 1-8 matchup in the East. This was the only series that I picked as a sweep in the first round. It does seem to be leading that way. I think the Sixers had, especially Ben Simmons, your boy, had a better performance in game 2. Do you see anything worth mentioning in this series? I mean, I just think the Wizards are criminally undermatched here and undermanned against the 76ers. I just don't think, the stars that they do have aren't great defenders at this point in their careers. Not to put them on blast or anything, but it's a typical 1-8 seed matchup. I don't know. Did you have any other thoughts?
Not too much. Full disclosure, since we're pretty deep in the playoffs, I'm only going to give like who I'm picking to win this series. I think it's kind of unfair just to pick how many games when we're kind of like 3 games into it. So like you, I will say you're not wrong in your assessment, Matt. With Philadelphia, I have the same pick in terms of Philly winning the series. I'll say 2 things. One, on the basketball front, I think this is a good series just for the Wizards in terms of the future, what's going to happen with Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook, just in terms of if you can build something there. I mean, there's been all sorts of rumors about Bradley Beal in terms of like if he's going to stay, is he going to leave, and Westbrook as well. It's just been weird with John Wall leaving. It's just been a thing of what is the identity of this team, and for them to be the laughing stock. Even though of COVID and everything, they were ravaged to get this A spot. I think they should be proud. I mean, I think this is a success, even if Philadelphia beats them by 50 points every single game. So the series outcome's not so important. I'm not going to know that much about Philadelphia from this series. I want to comment on the fan situation with Russell Westbrook and with Trae Young too. Now with Trae Young, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I saw the video and I couldn't really decipher where he got spit on. If you can shed some light on that. I looked at it over and over. And I was like, how did he get spit on? I don't understand.
It seemed like on his back. It seemed like it was pretty far away.
He didn't react to it. So I was wondering, I was like, what is happening here? And I read a tweet that was hilarious. Luckily, that fan didn't spit on 50 Cent because that's a death wish for sure. He's thankful he had Trae Young. I'll just say that. With Westbrook, a couple of things that was totally uncalled for. The NBA, I think they took whatever recourse that they could, banning the fan for life, revoking their season tickets. I think this is going to be an issue with the next round of negotiations with the players if they want to have courtside fans. And I know those seats are expensive. That's a huge source of revenue. But as we've seen with the pandemic, we have the video boards. And as imagine, hey, you pay, I don't know, you skyrocket the price, your face is on there. If you can recoup some of that revenue without, Westbrook or any of the fans, of the players, getting subjected to these harsh treatment, that, we could see that become a factor. So I kind of want to get your thoughts on Russell Westbrook in particular. This was brought up, I think, I want to say First Take or Dan Patrick, one of those two. It seems to be a lot of these incidents surround Westbrook. And I think Jalen and Jacoby talked about this. I think Jalen said it's just because, Westbrook is a polarizing player, and it seems like he reacts, in a kind of, I don't know how you say this, a highly reactive manner. I just think if this was like LeBron, I think he would be angry, but I don't know if he would have the same reaction as Westbrook. So do you think this is kind of like a league-wide problem, or do you think this is kind of isolated to Westbrook in particular?
Well, there's always going to be stupid fans that do stupid things no matter what we do.
That's true.
Of course, like the spitting on Trae Young is awful and very unaware. I mean, we're at a time where things are just opening up with COVID, and you're spitting on players. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Not that makes it. Not that it isn't bad even without that, but it's just kind of like on top of that, it's even more ridiculous. And then the Westbrook thing's terrible too. To kind of defend Russell Westbrook too. I think we don't hear all the things that the players deal with. There was, you probably remember, because in our legendary group chat, we actually posted the GIF in there of the fan giving, and it was the 76ers fan, courtside, gives Russell Westbrook the double bird. I think this was about 2 or 3 years ago. Okay. And Westbrook makes a very funny kind of joke about it. Like he dribbles the ball twice and like kind of points his hand at him like, who's this guy? And plays it off very, very well. I mean, you could see if he was truly a hothead all the time, I mean, you could see him doing the same gesture back to the guy, or worse, getting, putting his hands on him, pushing him back down in his seat, or even worse than that. Thankfully, of course, that didn't happen. So I don't know. I don't think there is enough cases of things like this happening to where the players would have enough leverage to offset the revenue that may be lost. Now, again, you mentioned a creative solution to that. Maybe something like that comes up. I don't see it as a big enough issue. I know it's getting a lot of run this week in the media, especially since we had, right the same night, the Westbrook thing and the Trae Young thing. I mean, everyone agrees they're horrible incidents. I mean, Westbrook, for goodness sake, he was going into the locker room to check on an injury and you're pouring something on him. But that wasn't courtside as well. That was from the hallway, So again, that's kind of to my point that it's stupid. We all hate to see that, or us rational people that aren't acting like that, which is the vast majority of people, I would say. But it can happen anywhere in these stadiums. So we could also expand that argument to be, which this isn't going to happen, obviously, but we could also expand it to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't have fans in person anymore with these games. But that's going to happen, given I think the ratings bump that you're seeing with these playoffs, with more intense basketball, with more actual live noise from the fans and just a better product with fans in the building. I think the reality is probably going to stick around, but I don't know, where would you agree, disagree?
I agree with that. I think from a technical leverage standpoint, you're right. I just think, as Dan Patrick put, these fans are being yelled, unconscionable things, all the time. And this is not only a NBA problem. This is a European soccer problem. This is all other sports. And, I think it goes both ways. I think athletes are too sensitive, AKA Kevin Durant. I think we know where the line is, right? The guy's game. And Westbrook put it perfectly. You want to say his game sucks. He can't dribble. He's got whack shoes. He turns over the ball. You choke. I think that's fair game. You want to say, you can't even lace up Michael Jordan sneakers, things that pertain to the game of basketball. That's all fair game. But you go after the person's family, race. This is no kind of a secret here. Anything that's derogatory going after somebody's family, that's crossing the line, and that's inexcusable. I don't know what higher security could do in that situation. Yeah. I've heard okay, more security. Where are you going to put more security? How is that security guard going to stop that fan? I mean, is the security guard going to sit next to people in the stands? I mean, they're not babysitters. I mean, these are grown adults who pay tickets prices. So ultimately, I think there has to be harsher punishments for this type of thing. So I think assault charges. Something, I don't know, where you're teaming up with the city in terms of, hey, you do this, you're going to jail for a certain amount of time, where there has to be some kind of consequences. Now, let's make it clear. I mean, it shouldn't be anything, super harsh, but it needs to be something that is, I think a massive punishment. So I think something, I don't know, just thinking about it, like a entertainment ban. So, you do this for the 76ers, you can't go to any professional sporting event within that state, something like that. You can't go to any arena if you do that. That's a pretty egregious thing to do that to somebody. I mean, you're crossing the field of play. You're crossing that boundary. And, just to bring up another thing, and I know some people may not be cool with this, but, I'm a pro wrestling fan. I've seen this from time to time where you see fans jump the railing and interfere with the wrestlers inside the ring. And that's super dangerous. And I've seen wrestlers beat the crap out of fans, and the refs too, just openly. So that's where I'm kind of sensitive to this type of thing, because I've seen fans, do this in the pro wrestling venue, and they've gotten hurt because they thought, it was a cool thing to interact with these guys. So overall, I think probably a harsher punishment to where, hey, they're making an example of, and I think, a entertainment ban, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Hey, you want to jump you want to throw popcorn on Russell Westbrook during the 76ers. Well, you're not going to an Eagles game. You're not going to a Flyers game, any kind of professional sport. You in that state, you can't go. It's like, that flyer, you see at a convenience store, or you see at a movie theater where, hey, this person's not welcome here because of this. I think something like that. I think that's fair. But other than that, I don't really know what other action you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, like in the case of throwing objects and things like that, you can get criminal charges for that.
Yes, absolutely. You've got
that's assault. Video evidence. So it's not like you have special immunity being in an arena or anything.
Not at all.
So that's definitely a possibility right now. It's on the table. I think the idea of the ban, the entertainment ban, is interesting. I think, definitely for the venue that they're in, and forgive me, I don't know the Sixers arena name off the top of my head, but, you could certainly, that arena, the incident happening there, they could ban them from all events in that arena. And I think that has happened in the past in certain situations. I know that the good news about both of these incidents with Trae Young and Russell Westbrook is there was swift, harsh action. In my opinion, we can always debate like how far they should go with that and take it further. But I do think they're sending a clear message that, hey, this is not tolerated at all. So I would say good on the NBA for that. If they wanted to expand that and like all teams join together to say like, hey, you're not coming to see road games either, or stadiums that host the NBA teams, things like that. I think that's on the table, and maybe we would see something like that. But yeah, I think you just have to be swift and clear in these incidents. I mean, it's not possible to bubble wrap the entire world, even from egregious, ridiculous things like this. Unfortunately, always going to happen with the live experience. But I think this swift, clear message is a good thing, that hopefully we have less of this.
Agreed.
Did you have anything more on that?
No, we can move on.
Okay. Let's look at, in my opinion, the next series that looked interesting, but really hasn't been, and it's understandable. I think everyone kind of knows what's going on here, and I'm referring to the Brooklyn Nets versus the Boston Celtics in that 2-7 matchup in the East. There, I picked this one, I believe, yes, Brooklyn in 5, and this was one where I could have seen maybe the Celtics take it to 6, especially if they had Jaylen Brown. Obviously, he was out for the year before this series even began, unfortunately. So the Celtics are not at full strength. They hardly have been for the entire year. I don't have too much on this series simply because I don't think, given the Celtics were the team that were most affected by COVID, of all the teams in the NBA. Actually, some of our compadres over on OTG have had stats that they've posted. Guys at Celtics Lab, for example, you can check them out if you want more Celtics info. They've had stats, showing how the Celtics have been greatly impacted by COVID. So I don't think there's too much to say. I don't put the blame of this series on Brad Stevens or this season even. I'm biased. I like Brad Stevens. I don't think he forgot how to coach. I think there are circumstances bigger than him and this team at play here. Do you have major concerns for Boston moving forward, or do you have thoughts on this series outside of what I said?
No thoughts on the series. I agree with you. Brooklyn, they'll handle the Celtics pretty easily.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to sound like Stephen A. Smith, but I just can't help it when we see situations like a Memphis or situations like a Golden State where you see a team perform and then the coach is gone. And with Brad Stevens, it's kind of like he's given a pass even though the Celtics underperformed. I don't think he should lose his job. I think next season the Celtics need to perform within, I would say, 1 to the 4th seed.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
I basically means they have to finish better than, the Heat. Something like that. They can't be at the bottom. I think, like you said, Matt, you're right in terms of COVID, in terms of, Jaylen Brown getting injured. It's a situation in which you can kind of see the circumstances and kind of give Boston a pass this season. However, we've seen this team with Kyrie, without Kyrie, with Kemba Walker, without Kemba Walker, with, Gordon Hayward, without him. When is this team going to take the next step? They got enough talent. It's clear that Tatum and Brown are, I think, superstar players in this league. I think it's fairly obvious to me, along with Kemba Walker. And it's just mind-boggling to me. You have those 3 players, and it just seems like they can't just find that chemistry. I'm wondering, like you said, our colleagues at Celtics Lab and even our Boston Celtics guest we had on, I forgot his name, but
Adam Taylor.
There you go. If they can just put their minds together and just figure out like what's happening with the chemistry of this team. Because clearly with Brooklyn, I mean, they haven't played together that much either. But when they're on the court, they're dominant. And I don't think that Kemba Walker, Tatum, and Brown, they're that far off from Brooklyn. It's not. I mean, I would say, of course, Brooklyn is the better, has to, in terms of their talent. But I wouldn't say Boston is that far behind. And for them to be that inferior, I think it's head scratching. So I think I'm going to reserve judgment until after this series is over, and then we'll see what happens. If they get swept, then my mind may change. Just being blatantly honest with you. But for now, they win a game. They show some fight. Let's see what happens next season.
Yeah, and I like my pick of Brooklyn in 5. I just really, it's hard. This may even be a sweep, to be honest, at this point. I'm just not seeing much from the Celtics. But let's move on. This one, I think when I recorded this weekend, I would have said this might be my most interesting series. It's kind of taken a step back now because of Milwaukee's dominance. So I'm talking about the 3-6 series, Milwaukee versus Miami, of course. Rematch of last year. Everyone kind of looking forward to this, coming back in. We've gotten some good games. Especially that first game that went to overtime. I picked Milwaukee in 6. I'm loving that pick, certainly for Milwaukee.
Sure.
Right now, as we speak, the game isn't finished, but Milwaukee, last I checked, had a commanding lead over the Heat. So it does look like Milwaukee's going to go up 3-0. Mm-hmm. Look, this Heat team just isn't the same as last year. Tyler Hero's had somewhat of a sophomore slump, and it just seems like there may be not as much motivation for Miami this year. Plus, they've dealt with injuries. Plus, for part of the season, they were struggling with COVID stuff, and they got hot at the end of the year. So it's kind of like you're expecting this momentum to carry into the playoffs, and it just hasn't. Also, I think credit to the Bucks, their roster is better. But
agreed.
Please, Justin, your thoughts.
I feel you. A couple of things. One, this has been an insane season for Tyler Hero. He's been taking a lot of heat on Twitter. It seems like the success has gotten to his head. And again, I think there's a Heat podcast on the OTG network as well. I love to talk to those guys about Tyler Hero. And it kind of started, this is going to sound weird, but I saw a video of Tyler Hero on GQ. And they have athletes on there, and they basically what they do is they count their first $1 million. So they give him a stack of $1 million, literally on the table, and he basically breaks down what he does with $1 million through his rookie contract. And you can just see, I don't know, I'm going to sound like I'm judging him, but talking to him, I was like, okay, one or two things are going to happen. A, this guy's going to be a superstar. Like, I love the guy's swagger. At the same time, if he falls off, if he's not working as hard, this could come back to haunt him. And I think that's what's happening here. So we'll see. I think I don't want to be too hard on Tyler Hero. Like you said, people can grow in the offseason. You can grind. I mean, he's with Jimmy Butler. I mean, if there's one guy to really change his ways, it's Jimmy Butler. And speaking of him, and Stephen A was on his case, and I agree with him, the first 2 games, he played poorly. And that can't happen. He needs to be the scoring force. And I disagree with him because I think he was talking about Jimmy Butler in more of a leadership position, but he needs to score. I mean, they're playing against the Bucks, who are one of the most elite teams in the East. I mean, he can't just be a good leader. He has to score the basketball. He's playing better now. I think he has 19 points as we're talking about this. I think it's game 3 here. So, but they're getting killed. I mean, like you said, Matt, they're losing by 26 points. I think they're toast.
Surprisingly, Bam has been a letdown this game 3 from what I've seen. And it's weird. It's like catching different players at different times. They just can't all click.
Yeah, I feel you. One more thing, Giannis. I think there was a game. I think it's with him. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was game 1 where he did not play well either. So that was a little bit unusual as well. They won the game, but I know his performance was not up to his standards as well. So I think as we get deeper into playoffs, when there's Brooklyn, when there's Philadelphia, there's those teams, whoever they run into, Giannis, if he has a subpar game, I think the Heat's going to be, no pun intended, is going to be on him as well. So those are my thoughts as well. But I think the Bucks, I wouldn't surprise me if they sweep. I think it's a wrap.
I'm with you. Let's move on to now what I think is hands down the most interesting matchup in the East right now in this first round. That's the Knicks versus the Hawks. We talked about Trae Young and that incident earlier, so we don't need to cover that. But this series is tied, and this is a series where I feel like going into this, I didn't know who to pick, and I didn't. So my rationale was I love the team defense that the Knicks are playing. I think the fans are going to feed off of that energy. The Knicks are going to have a nice home court advantage for this. And we saw some of that in game 2 when the Knicks were able to come back and how electric Madison Square Garden was. So I ultimately picked the Knicks in 7. Maybe I pushed it out to 7 because of some of my uncertainty here. It wouldn't shock me at all if Atlanta took this series in 6 games as well, just because I do think they are more talented and deeper than the Knicks overall. But what have you seen so far? What do you like so far? What's your feeling on this series so far?
Yeah, a couple of things. And this is why I am a proponent of the playoffs meaning more than a regular season. And I know that might seem like, okay, that's obvious, but a lot of people are like, okay, the regular season, we should take the awards and the accomplishments into account. It's about the playoffs. It's different. And we saw that with Julius Randle and his performance so far. We've seen with Trae Young. And it's different when it's playoff time. And especially with those New York Knicks fans. I saw a video. I don't know if there's a notorious YouTube channel that covers the New York Knicks. They're very New York Knicks. And they had all the fans that are outside the arena. They are hungry, just starving, just waiting for the Knicks to be good. And it's just so much pressure that can Julius Randle handle it? I mean, he won, I believe, most improved player. A lot of good things have happened this year. The fans are back. And when the lights are on bright, when that Madison Square Garden is packed, I mean, can he handle it? And then reverse when he goes to Atlanta, Atlanta has home court now. It's just tied 1-1. So I think we've seen that with Trae Young where, he's hungry for it. And it's just, it's different. It's just, that's why to me with the regular season, it's kind of like, well, all right, you did it. That's all well and good, but when it counts the most, I mean, championships do matter. I mean, that's the whole point of getting into this. I mean, the individual accomplishments in the regular season, I mean, that's something to take hold, and that's something not to ignore. At the same time, what's more valuable is what you do in the playoffs compared to, the regular season. That's why, to me, not to spin off to a whole different discussion, but I think Robert Horry's a Hall of Famer easily because not just because of the rings, but he played an influential role in every one of those championship rings, even though his stats may not represent that in terms of, I don't think he scored 10,000 points, but clearly he had enough shots. He was there. The playoffs matter. And I think in this series, I'm curious to see what is Julius Randle? Can he be a centerpiece for this team, or is this kind of a band of misfit toys and they're going to break up in 2 years? So we will see what happens. I like the Knicks in this series, but I'm not confident in that pick at all. I think it goes 7, but we'll see.
Yeah, great points. I do wonder, with your point about the regular season and the playoffs there, the Knicks may be a tough team to run into in the regular season with the energy that they played. I think just thanks to how Tom Thibodeau coaches his teams and how rugged they are, how battle tested they are. And you have a lot of former Bulls, as on that team that know how to grind and know his system and can advocate for him.
Mm-hmm.
I do wonder though, if they're easier to manage when you're going to see them, you have to beat them 4 of 7 times. You can game plan for that team every night. And it's the perfect testing ground to answer that question that you just asked about, is Julius Randle going to elevate his game even more, whether it's this year or next year if they're in the playoffs again, or is he going to be kind of a big stats on a less successful team kind of guy? So hopefully we get some answers to that. But, to another point, just real quick about the Knicks, and then let's move on to the West Coast.
Sure.
The funny thing to me, I guess it was 2013 was the Melo-led Knicks, the last time they had any success in the playoffs. And you're right about the Knicks fans being so hungry, being so into it. But in a way, doesn't it feel a little bit to you like they're also happy to be there? Like just
Yeah. Oh yeah.
like it's kind of like
Yes.
it's not going to be, in spite of how diehard the Knicks fans are and how smart I think a lot of their fans are, it's not going to be the biggest letdown if they go down to the 5 seed in this series.
Yeah, you're right, because I think it was Dan Patrick's show again. Mike Breen, announcer for MSG Network and ABC. He was at Game One, and after the Star Spangled Banner, where the broadcast booth is located, they're in the stands with the fans. They're not courtside. So he was saying there's multiple people crying, just crying because they're back at Madison Square Garden. They're crying because they're back, and totally, it's a thing where they're happy to be there. And I think it's just kind of a homecoming. So you're right. If they get bounced in this series, I think they'll be all right with it. And then things will get back to normal, and then they'll be trashing Julius Randle, saying he's trash, get him out of here, along with Derrick Rose and Tosh Gibson, and if they can't produce. So I think the good feelings are happening now, but that can turn fairly quickly, depending on their performance.
I would agree. Yeah, I just think you're going to have like kind of a honeymoon phase with this team. Even if they go out in the first round, they're still going to be on board at the start of the next year.
Sure.
But yeah, I think another first round exit next year would be bad news for everyone involved.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go to the West. We have, gosh, I guess I'll start with the least competitive series here. Who would have thought? You and I talked about this last year during the bubble, after the bubble, start of this season. We have been pretty consistent that we are not buying the Clippers, who are the 4 seed, and they are down right now 2-0 to the Dallas Mavericks, the Luka Doncic Mavericks. I picked the Clippers in 6, and I think my pick is wrong at this point because you have the next 2 games are in Dallas, and Dallas is already up. If Dallas gets one of those games,
it's over.
It's going to be hard to imagine Luka not being able to go off for at least one of those 3 remaining games. How do you see this series playing out? And what do you see as the future implications for both the Clippers and for Luka's kind of rising star in this league?
It's been a very interesting season for Luka because I think he was hurt for a certain part of the season, right? So
he got off to a really slow start.
Okay, was he was not, so he wasn't injured. He got to a more of a slow start. Okay.
I don't know if there may have been injury involved.
Okay.
There may have been some COVID things involved. It may have also been he had to play his way back in shape a little bit at the start of the year. I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
I'd have to go read.
Nevertheless, there's been a drop off compared to him in the bubble. And I think with this upset, it will bring him back to the national spotlight because he is top 3, one of the best players in this league,
and he's 22.
Yeah,
he's 22. My goodness.
And I don't think he's appreciated in terms of his skill at all. Excuse me. It's funny. I picked the Clippers too. I'm not feeling happy about that pick. Kawhi Leonard. I mean, he's averaging 33 points a game, but most likely he's going to take some heat for losing the series. And Paul George. I mean, it's just. What can we say? I mean, it is what it is with this guy in terms of his playoff performance. So to me, I think with this Clippers teams, it's a massive disappointment. And I think they have some restructuring to do. Clearly, this is not working. What I'm interested in seeing also is like with Porzingis on the court, what can this team do? I mean, Porzingis is kind of the key. Clearly, when he's out, they're a different team. I mean, he has to be in there for the Dallas to have any semblance of making any kind of a playoff run.
And that's what happened last year.
Yeah.
He was hurt.
Yep. Exactly right. So to me, if he stays healthy, I like Dallas's chances in this series. But, he's made out of glass. So you cough on him, the Clippers can just run the gambit and come back and win this series. That's based on his injury. And that's what concerns me. And I love Porzingis. I'm on the Porzingis bandwagon. I think when he's healthy, he's a fantastic player. But he's too injury prone. He's not an elite player in this league just due to how often he gets hurt, unfortunately. So I think I echo the same sentiments you have, Matt. I not feeling comfortable with the Clippers pick at all.
It's funny because we talked about this. I don't think it was on the pod. Maybe it was just a conversation you and I were having. But Porzingis and Luka have been. Even Mark Cuban said in an interview they've really been having chemistry issues, and that pales in comparison to the chemistry issues going on this Clippers team.
It's true,
and it seems like Bill Simmons made the comment. He has this whole like body language doctor segment that he does or whatever, where he tries to get a feel for how the players feel for each other and just about things in general. And his comment on Rondo is that he's not really playoff Rondo. He's not feeling this team. I don't know whether that's true or not, of course. It's not like Rondo has given us any sound bites on that, but I think Kawhi's gone. I think if they don't win their very next game, I mean, if they go down 3-0, that's a wrap for this series. I think Kawhi has an option to get out. And unless he just really badly wants to be in LA, I think he's gone. And you've pretty much got, 4 years of Paul George left. You gave a ton of your draft picks away to OKC to get Paul George to get there. Friend of the show, Josh, was texting in our group friend chat that just the pathetic amount of picks that the Clippers have moving forward. So I think it's going to be a return to mediocrity for the Clippers long term if some things don't change big time in the near future.
Yeah, I feel you. And one other thing, and we can move on if you want, Matt. There's just the whole thing about like Kawhi Leonard and him being the best player in the league, better than LeBron. I mean, come on.
2019, we were saying that. Not you and me, but the media was running with that.
What disrespect of LeBron James. And it irritates me because of it kind of gets to the whole thing of, okay, if you don't think he's better than Jordan, then he's just trash. Like LeBron is one of the greatest athletes in the history of this country, history of the planet Earth. Okay?
Oh yeah.
It's just it's one of those things where you see how much impact he has on a team being alone, and especially that Warrior series comes to mind where he's totally outgunned and he almost pulls it off himself. So to me, it's just like I don't want to hear any comparisons between him and Kawhi Leonard again. I like Kawhi Leonard. I think he's a great player in this league, but he's not on LeBron James's level, not even close.
Yeah. I don't think he is, especially if this series goes down the way it's likely to. Yeah, I think you have to put him on a tier below. I mean, certainly still one of the most dominant players in this league when he's healthy.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, he's pretty much unraveling the narrative that he built for himself with that Raptors run.
That's true.
Let's look at next the series that I think I'm most confused by, and I don't know what to tell you about. And that's the Nuggets, your hometown Denver Nuggets,
right?
Versus the Portland Trailblazers. This is, of course, the 3-6 matchup in the West. I picked Denver in 6. I can't really tell you why. I could listen back to myself rambling about it, but no, I think I've never been a fan of Portland's defense. I, of course, am a fan of Damian Lillard, but I still don't buy into the structure of that team and that they can make a deep playoff run. You could tell me that Portland is going to win this game this series in 6 games. I would have no problem with that because Damian Lillard could just be outstanding and do that. You could tell me Denver wins this game in 6 like I picked, and I would obviously agree with that. What are your thoughts? Do you have a feel for this series or any other insights you can bring to my confusion?
I'm less confused about this series, and I think Denver's just a more stable team, but I think they're ripe for the upset. And if they keep, it's one of those things where now I think the series it's kind of gone the way I expected. I like your 6 games pick for Denver. I think in a game 7, that's where things get dangerous. I like the Joker. He's always consistent. I love his game. I think he's going to prove to be the difference in this series. And I think we've seen with from CJ McCollum and even Carmelo are kind of inconsistent. You can't really rely on that. And I think Portland has a lot of flaws in their game as well, especially on the defensive end. So I get it. I like Damian Lillard. This is a sexy pick to pick the upset. I can't do it. I can't, just based on what's going on in game 3. I mean, it's happening, I believe, about almost less than an hour from now when we're recording this podcast. And I think in Portland, I think it's going to be the fan dynamic is going to be very interesting, because I don't know, excuse me, what the capacity limit is in Portland, but I do know here in Denver that they up the capacity to 15,000 fans. So next time they play in Denver, well, I guess I take that back. Well, no, they're in Portland now, but I guess it'd be game 5 that they're going to be in Denver. Basically, they'll be at almost full capacity. So that's going to be a game changer, and they're already kind of affecting the game in game 1. They're bullying Carmelo, and that seemed to kind of motivate him just due to all the bad blood that he, that all that passed. So to me, I'm less confused. I just can't do it with Portland. I wish. I really wish. But yeah, no. I think Denver's gonna pull it out.
I think that's well said. Like you alluded to, though, I'm going to be very nervous if it goes to 7.
Me too.
Damian Lillard does have that history as a cold-blooded killer when it comes to game 7s and game-winning shots and clutch moments like that. Ending Paul George's Oklahoma City career. You can see the list. He knocked out my Houston Rockets on a buzzer beater one year when Dwight Howard was actually playing pretty well in the playoffs during his time in the Rockets. So the history is there, but yeah, I'm with you. I think Denver has the balance and stability to pull this off. So let's move on to, I guess we'll save the Lakers for last. Let's move on to a series that has been surprisingly more entertaining than maybe initially was thought, and that's the Utah Jazz, the 1 seed versus the 8 seed Memphis Grizzlies. Story here has basically been Ja Morant shocked us all in game 1. It happened basically while I was recording that last episode. I did have an eye on that. I knew it was coming. And I had already picked earlier in the week that regardless of whether it was going to be Golden State or Memphis, I thought the Jazz would win that series in 5, just because the West is a little deeper. Wouldn't surprise me if the 1 seed gets shocked for a game. So, the Grizzlies getting that win was definitely something, and spoke to that team, I think, being better than I thought they were overall, because there have also been good performances from Dylan Brooks and other members of that Grizzlies team. But I still think with Donovan Mitchell returning in game 2, the Jazz just have too many weapons, too much firepower, too much depth for the Grizzlies to be able to handle. I don't have much else to say about it other than that. I love that Ja Morant had like 47 points in game 2, and that he's been amazing in the playoffs. It's been cool to see his name brought up on the national stage. But what else did you have on this series?
My thoughts is that I feel sorry for Memphis that Ja Morant's going to leave your team someday.
Oh man,
sorry to say that. I'm sorry. you know the inedible is going to happen. You know the ending to the story.
I just don't want to believe it.
And that kind of goes for Donovan Mitchell too. I mean, to be perfectly honest, if Utah can't get it done, They've been the 1 seed a few times. They've been the top of the Western Conference. What is the fate of this team? What happens with the Utah Jazz? It's weird because they're the number 1 seed. No one gives a crap. No one cares.
Including myself.
No one cares. So I think Utah wins this series. Game 1, despite the heroics from Ja Morant, I think Donovan Mitchell's back now. It's very clear. And you're right. The weapons. I think Utah wins this series, but I think with Memphis, they have a very promising future if they can find a way to build around Ja Morant, and that's a time limit. They got to figure it out, or else he's gone. It's plain and simple. And I think with Utah, it's a thing with like Rudy Gobert. What is he just has to be a larger scoring option, especially facing the elite teams in the West. So we'll see what happens. Not much to say about this. Other than I've enjoyed Ja Morant's game. I enjoyed him. I know I didn't get to talk about it, but them against Golden State, I enjoyed that as well. So Excuse me. But I expect, Utah to basically handle them. If it goes 6, it wouldn't really surprise me. But I think, with Donovan Mitchell back, clearly he has a Damian Lillard-esque hunger towards him that he wants this very badly. And I don't think the Utah Jazz are primed for the upset here.
Yeah, well said. I don't have anything else to add. You ready to move on to the West favored Lakers, one of maybe the first 7 seed to ever be favored by Vegas on this series opening against the 2 seed Phoenix Suns. This series is tied 1-1. Just quick summary. Chris Paul was injured, shoulder contusion in game 1. He had to leave, I believe, in the second half of game 2 because that shoulder was still bothering him. He is questionable for tonight. I believe he's going to play.
Okay.
From last I heard, that game is going on tonight, I think. And so basically it seems like it's another series that hinges on Chris Paul's health. Unfortunately, this has been a common occurrence in a legendary career overall in the playoffs. The infamous hamstring injury when he was on the Rockets, when it was looking like they really could challenge those Warriors, that Warriors dynasty. Looks like an injury might play into this series too, and I think that's kind of my take moving forward. I do think Phoenix has more of a shot than I gave them credit for initially. But it seems like if Chris Paul isn't 100%, I don't know if they're going to have enough to beat the Lakers. And with each game that goes on, the Lakers are building more rhythm with each other, with LeBron getting to spend more time with AD on the court. So I don't know. I picked the Lakers in 6. I like that pick. I think that pick is still going to hold. If I had gun to my head and had to tell you exactly what it's going to be, I do see it playing out that way. I think the Suns have earned a lot of respect from me personally, though, in that I do think they can contend a little better than I gave them credit for going into this series. How do you think this is going to play out? And how much of a puncher's chance do you give the Suns?
Without Chris Paul, none. However, that first game where I saw Anthony Davis, he only went to the line 5 times. That's a disgrace. I mean, as Charles Barkley said, what are you doing taking jump shots? And also, it always pops into my mind with Kevin Garnett. I don't really like Kevin Garnett as like a human being, but as a player, he's absolutely right. When you're a big man, I mean, I'm going to curse here. It's going to sound like a rap video, but you back that ass up in the lane. Well, that's what you do. You get in the lane, you get fouled. I mean, he's too talented. He's
That's
too talented.
2021 though, man. You got Joel Embiid shooting threes.
It's true, but he also gets in there as well.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah, like you could do both. I have no problem with shooting threes. You can do both. Do both.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that's an admiration. We'll see if that's, hey, he's had a bad game, whatever, who cares? But I don't want to see that again. That's a terrible performance. And it's one thing, let's say, everybody has a bad night in the paint. Let's just say he's not missing layups, something's wrong with them, whatever. At least the shot attempts are up. It's kind of like a jump shooter where Steph Curry, sometimes he's going to go 2 for like 22, right? It's just the nature of the beach. There's no problem with he's being aggressive. And, eventually those shots will fall. But you see a guy not being aggressive, it means he doesn't care. Something's up. So that's a concern moving towards the later playoffs for the Lakers. You're right with the Lakers in 6. I feel you. And I think the thing with this Suns team, with Aiden and Booker, what is the deal with these teams? That's the thing I'm looking at is what is the future of these teams? My confusion comes into the elite of the Western Conference, and really even in the East too. Like, who are the really true players in this league? Because really all I see, I think they're on teams that can't win the title. So like Damian Lillard, like I think he is a true playoff performer. The Portland Trailblazers can't win the NBA championship. And I think looking at it like a Giannis, that's a question mark. But looking at a Jimmy Butler, I think he's a championship type player. The Heat are not going to win the title. And so you take a look at these players. I'm like, okay, there's Kawhi Leonard, kinda. There's LeBron, of course, Kevin Durant. When the Warriors are healthy, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson. But a lot of these other players, we have a lot of new blood in this league. And it's just hard for me to get a read on, okay, like, what can these players really do? Because it's great. To me, I'm a little bit desensitized to the regular season because I'm like, okay, that's great. You have this great scoring run, whatever. But in these series, this like seeing these kind of elite players get bounced early on in the playoffs every single year, like what's happening here? And I think with Chris Paul, to your point, is it going to stick with him? Like it might with James Harden. Let's say if Brooklyn doesn't win the title here, I mean that's going to really stick to James Harden, not only with Brooklyn but with the Rockets and with Oklahoma City. And I think with Chris Paul, you mentioned the hamstring, but I want to ask you, Matt, before we bounce. I mean, let's say the Suns, they lose this series, and let's say Chris Paul has 2 more years and he doesn't even go to the NBA Finals. Do you think that he has that's a reputation that he's, can't get it done in the playoffs? His body breaks down. Is that going to be a thing where he's kind of like has a loser? I know it's ridiculous because Chris Paul's not a loser, but at the same time, it's no secret his success in the playoffs are not that good, especially when it counts the most. So I think, what do you make of his legacy, considering, he's the difference maker to the Suns? I mean, the Suns are not the 2 seed if it was not for him.
Yeah, I think what has happened since the 90s is the media is a little bit more sensitive to the players' feelings, the players' legacies. At least this is my perception. So I don't think you're going to have Chris Paul getting ridiculed like a Charles Barkley in the same way. Because you could argue in a lot of ways Charles Barkley's impact on his teams. I mean, I wouldn't characterize Charles Barkley as like a choke artist, even though he didn't get a title. So I think there's maybe a more nuanced understanding of careers and career success.
Not on Twitter.
Well, yeah. I mean, let's see if you have a profile picture, though.
Yeah, that's true.
No, but I do think it's going to be something that among like that fraternity of players, it's going to be something that when they're on the banana boat, what have you, he's going to get ripped on for not having a title. And it's going to be, I think, more in a sense of just, boys having fun or whatever, that kind of thing. So I don't think he's going to get the knock on him that Barkley gets. I don't think he's going to have like a Shaq sitting across from him if he were on TNT, like always jabbing at him for not winning a chip. I just think times are a little different, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure, there'll at least be one person in the media who does it, no doubt. I just don't think it's going to be the narrative that sticks to him.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I don't think so either, but it's just a worry the times we live in, and it's just kind of like a pattern that has occurred. So we'll see. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer. He's a legend in this game, but it's just an unfortunate way for the Suns to end this improbable season. If in fact he is injured. I mean, anything else you want to add to the series, man?
Yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts real quick. I don't have anything else for this series. I thought your points about Anthony Davis and using that KG quote, that was on point. I wanted to get your thoughts just quickly on just a prediction right now, since we're super early into this. I penciled in Nets versus Lakers. I do think that is the finals that we're going to get. I'm feeling kind of encouraged by what I'm seeing from Milwaukee in this first round, that they seem hungry, but I'm not flip-flopping on my picks or anything like that. I have Nets Lakers in the finals. Do you see any other combo of teams making it to the finals? And then I'll also ask you after that, so what do you think is going to happen? And then what are you personally rooting for, just out of curiosity?
So I agree with your pick. If Jamal Murray was active, I'd be apt to pick Denver versus Brooklyn.
Ooh, like I can't,
but I can't do it. It's just I just think I'm going to be boring. The Lakers are the most complete team in the playoffs. They have the most experience. The other teams are too flawed. I think the Lakers, they're going to pretty much breeze into it. I think Brooklyn. I think it'll be interesting to see how they do against Milwaukee and how they possibly do against, Philadelphia. I mean, that's a tougher matchup. And you take a look at the Lakers, and now granted, they it's weird because I'm going to seem like I'm kind of dismissing, Denver there, but I just with all the weapons LA has and just them defensively, I just don't see it. I can see them having an easier time to the NBA Finals, to be honest, compared to Brooklyn, under their continuity. What I want to happen, I want the Dallas Mavericks to go to the NBA Finals.
Oh yes, I love it. Rise of Luka.
Yeah, either him. I mean, honestly, just looking at the brackets, would it be cool to see Portland versus Dallas? That would be kind of my fantasy, but that's not going to happen. So
awesome. And then on the East, any team you're particularly pulling for to get to the finals, or?
No, not really. I think
we're on the West Coast, so
yeah, I
we
think
have a little more investment, maybe.
My heart, the biased person in me with the Bulls you mentioned earlier with Derrick Rose and Tosh Gibson. I mean, and Thibodeau. It's weird. There's 3 Bulls, and now they're playing with the Knicks. It's a weird situation to be in, but I think that'd be interesting.
Them, that's fair.
That'd be an interesting story to see. I'm curious about Philly in terms of Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. So, Philly or Brooklyn, they're the probably most compelling stories. And of course, again, if Giannis can't get past both of them, what is Giannis? What do we make of him? I mean, does he not have enough firepower? Does he need to go somewhere else? Especially if there's if Milwaukee gets past Brooklyn somehow, and if they face Philly and lose, that's still going to stick to Giannis, even though that'd be a huge upset against Brooklyn, I think. So, I don't know. I think those are kind of the stories to watch.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Awesome. Well, good to catch up with you about this playoff stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know we'll be back at it again this weekend, so you guys stay tuned. Pay attention to our YouTube feed, our Twitter feed, etc., because we're going to be putting out a little bit of extra content this playoffs, as just about everyone is. Yeah. So catch up with us. Thank you so much, Justin. Always a pleasure.
Well, same to you, Matt. And again, thanks for holding down the fort as I'm just getting settled into just a new home here in lovely Denver, Colorado. So for Matt Thomas, I am Justin Goodrum, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.